you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Playing on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Playing on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. With Tony Marinaro.
55 seconds left in the penalty, a minute and 27 seconds left in regulation time. Boston 4, Montreal 3. Lafleur coming out rather gingerly on the right side. He gives it into Lemaire, back to Lafleur. Oh!
The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
You're in the spot!
Sports entertainment like no other.
Rejoint, on lui fait perdre la rondelle, une passe devant. Et c'est le dégagement et ce sera la victoire des Canadiens. Coupe Stanley pour les Canadiens. Le 23e de l'histoire.
You found the dogs! John, you found the dogs! He found the dogs! And all together, they worked a young team to the top. And now, a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup.
Brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. La Bittt. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination. It's gonna be sick.
Marinaro, the Sick Podcast on this Wednesday, July 19th. The Sick Podcast, weeknights at 10 p.m. You can watch on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Twitter. You can also listen, of course, via all social media apps, including Google, Apple, Spotify. List goes on and on. The Sick Podcast brought to you in part by Energy Transportation Group, recently named by Deloitte and CIBC as one of Canada's best managed companies. The country's leading business award, recognizing innovative and world-class companies, the best managed Canadian companies. Designation fuels Energy's purpose of creating progress for their customers, their employees, and their communities. Join a winning team and check out Energy's career page for available opportunities. The Sick Podcast is also brought to you in part by Playground, your premier gaming destination. Playground Summer Million is the must-play poker event of the season, featuring 10 championship ring events, $1 million in guaranteed prize money pools, and a $500,000 guaranteed main event located just over the Mercier Bridge, only minutes from downtown Montreal. Playground, and brought to you by La Bittt Tibi, brewed in Quebec, a winner of a dozen international awards. La Bittt Tibi offers quality microbrewery beers made with premium ingredients for everyone's taste. La Bittt Tibi, embrace your true nature. Tonight's guest, I called him last week. I reached out to him last week. As a matter of fact, I think he was at some summer concert 1 or 2 nights in a row. He is former NHLer Philippe Boucher. Comment vas-tu?
Ça va bien, toi? How about 10 out of 12 nights or something like that? But it was fun. A lot of fun in Quebec last week.
Yeah. So you're at the chalet, huh?
Yeah.
How's
first time with my my new iPad here. Am I looking straight at you?
You know what?
Just set up. We this is kind of a last minute here.
No. You're
all good.
You're looking great. You're looking great.
Thanks,
the
bud.
fact that you got the iPad. Hey, listen, that's good. The iPad is looking good, man. So when did you pick up the iPad exactly?
When I had to give my computer back to Drummondville. I thought they were going to give it to me, and they asked for it about a month ago. So I bought an iPad. Kind of like it.
Oh, really? Hey, did you buy the keyboard as well with the iPad or no?
Oh yeah, got everything. Got the whole setup. Yeah.
You know what? I ended up going with a MacBook Pro, to tell you the truth, but I was this close to going to the iPad, and some days I kind of wish I had it. So you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if I take a stroll down to the Apple store in the next week or two and I pick one up, because the convenience of it, the fact that you could just bring it around, put it in your knapsack or whatever, it's pretty cool. All right. Okay, good. Listen, thanks for joining me.
Sure.
Even though it is the middle of July or past, or we're almost in the third week of July here, there's still a Montreal Canadiens topic or two to talk about. It's going to be interesting because I remember one of the things we talked about the last time you joined me, and a player in particular. So we'll get to that in just a moment. But I think the main topic of conversation, I saw this on NHL.com. Sean Farrell wrote a piece on what he thinks the Montreal Canadiens lineup will look like, who the line mates will be, who the defense partners will be, who will play with who will not be in the lineup. And I found it very interesting. I'm going to say this. Although a lot of people are going to disagree with some things, I thought there was a lot of logic to what was done, and I'll explain that in just a second. But
can you put it on for me? Can I see what his opinion was? Or
well, what I'll do is I'll read it for you. Okay,
sure.
I'll read it for you. So, but before I do, let me ask you this: who would your centers be?
Suzuki, obviously number 1. Monahan, number 2 and number 3, and I would keep Kirby Dach at center. I would. For the future, I would.
Okay, so you
one-
said
one-
that. So you said
number
Suzuki.
one.
Yeah,
Dach to eventually challenge him, right?
yeah,
Maybe.
yeah.
And then Monahan at center.
Okay, that's interesting. All right, so what I'll do is, you just said something, so I'm actually gonna write the lines for you. I think that's what I'm gonna do.
Perfect.
Okay, this way you can have a chance.
You're
because
catching me off guard here.
No. Listen, I should have prepared.
That's okay.
I should have prepared a graphic, as a matter of fact, so you could have seen it.
Yeah.
But all right, this is who he has. He has Monahan,
Yeah.
Suzuki, and Caulfield as your first line. So he does not have Monahan
Okay.
playing center.
Which I don't. Well, I guess you're going to tell me a little bit more in a bit. But
No, explain. No, talk to me about that.
if it's to keep Dach number 2 center, which I haven't seen his list, to me it makes sense.
And Dach is a number 2 center on his list.
Perfect. That makes sense to me.
Okay, so then he's got Dach
Yeah.
with Josh Anderson on the right
Yeah.
and Newhook on the left.
I like that. I can't disagree with that.
Okay, and then he's got Christian Dvorak at center.
Yeah.
With Gallagher on the right and Hoffman on the left.
Well, that's not your typical third line, but let's see what your fourth line is. His fourth line is, and then we'll.
Evans with Armia on the right.
Yeah.
And Slavkovsky on the left.
Yeah, I don't see. I don't mind too much of that because your third and fourth line depend on who's going to play well. Is going to play a little bit more. It's Slavkovsky will need some time. He hasn't played a lot last year. I think eventually the number 1 overall pick of any year should be in the top 6 or near the top 6, but that might take some time for him. Obviously, Suzuki and Caulfield. Everybody's going to get a turn on the first line. I think we know it's it's 2 players, right? 2 right-handed players, Caulfield and Suzuki, that will need a good fit. No problem with Monahan, but they can all get there. They can all move up, maybe Slavkovsky later in the year. So I don't mind that lineup too much. I don't spend too much. I used to coach, and I didn't spend that much time putting the lines together because they come together. You try a few different things, and all of a sudden you realize something, and you keep it together.
Or the pieces kind of fall into place, and it kind of sometimes happens, plays itself out organically. Is that it? It's probably not the best handwriting in the world there.
Yeah,
but,
I see it.
Suzuki
it's a decent lineup.
Okay, Suzuki, Caulfield on the right, Monahan on the left, Dach with Anderson on the right and Newhook on the left, and Dvorak with Gallagher on the right and Hoffman on the left, and Evans with Armia on the right and Slav on the left. And so Pizzetta, Raphael, RV Pinard, and maybe even Jesse Alone, and maybe even Elias Anderson out of the lineup. But I'm going to tell you something.
Yeah.
I know that Monahan is not the sexy pick on the number 1 line.
Yeah.
I love it. Ask me why.
Because he's a good veteran player that if he plays well, you could move him at the deadline. Did I answer for you?
His contract is up at the end of the year. Let's put him in a position to succeed.
Yeah.
So if Sean Monahan ends up playing with those guys, and ends up, by the deadline, they've played 55 games, and he's got 44 points. Let's just say, 40 points, 42 points. If he's got points and he shows other teams that he not only can contribute offense with goals, not only can contribute offense with assists, but also can still keep up and play with first-line players and be not only a player on a team, but an important player on a team, all of a sudden, a first-round pick in return is not impossible.
Or a long-term deal if he stays healthy. I would doubt that. I would doubt that because, they've been drafting quite a bit and they'll go with younger players, but you never know. Hey, ideally, if Monahan plays well as a number 2 center, number 3 center, or first-line left winger, the Montreal Canadiens are going to win, and he's going to win. And that's what everybody wants.
All right. But I think what catches a lot of people by surprise is that RHP is not in the lineup. But look, once again, I understand it, right? He's got a 2-year deal at $1.1 million a year. Mike Hoffman is also going into the last year of his contract. He has to be moved. Yoel Armia's got a 2-year deal. He's got a bigger contract than RHP, obviously. I kind of get it. Now,
Yeah,
I mean,
do they need to play that much to be moved for high draft picks? Unless they catch on fire early in the year, they'll be moved aside, and RVPNR will be playing. So maybe
does it not hurt your value when you've been a healthy scratch several times when a team's trying to deal you?
But are they really gonna have value? If they had value, they would have been moved last year.
I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you. You still try and you cross your fingers and you hope that the guys end up having a very, very good year on the year.
I think the older guys will get a chance early on, and if RVPNR plays better than Gallagher, and we all want to see Gallagher play well RVPNR eventually. See, I was offered a contract with Pittsburgh. The year I retired, I was offered a contract, and Dan Balsma was the coach.
Yeah, and
in the playoffs, it was hard because I was playing well, and then they played other guys. And Dan Balsma was a good friend of mine. We are I can share this story. I think it's public. They lost a kid. Our wives were pregnant together, and we're due at the same time. They had their showers together, and then they lost the baby. And Dan and his wife's such a good person. They came over to the house, hugged their kid, Matthew, and then shared with us that we could enjoy our moment, even though it was really tough for them. I think that the kid, just before birth, the boy passed away. And
That's
so
terrible.
we were very close. So let's go back to Pittsburgh, where when we won the cup, I didn't play a lot. I wish I would have played more. And right under the alarm clock, when we were going to shake hands, I couldn't shake his hand right there. And so I just moved past, and then we talked a few days later and said, Phil, that was the toughest decision I ever made. I think you should have played a little bit more, but we were winning. I said, okay, fine. And then I said, Dan, you did all the right things, right? He said, if I coach for 20 years, it's going to be the toughest decision ever. I said, you did the right things. I got a ring. Everything is fine. Later in the summer, I signed a contract. I agreed to a contract.
Hold on a second, but you didn't shake his hand?
No, I couldn't do it. We looked at each other in the eyes, and I kind of turned. We did later on, but that was right after the game on the ice. It was very emotional. So, and anyway, when I signed the contract, I agreed to the contract with Pittsburgh. He called me. He said, listen, Phil, we're not going to go through this again, because we did talk later on at the Stanley Cup parties and everything.
Yeah.
We're not going to go through this again. He said, I think they signed Jay McKee and someone else. So, if you come to Pittsburgh, you're the number 8 guy for the first 20 games, no matter what. No matter if you play well, whatever you do, you're the number 8 guy on defense. We have this guy and that guy and Letang and whatever.
Yeah.
But after 20 games, I get free reign on what I'm going to do. After 20 games, if you're number 1, you'll play like number 1. If you're number 2, you'll play like number 2. And if you're number 8, you'll play like number 8.
So for the first 20 games, he was given a directive.
And that happens a lot. Trust me, that happens a lot. Wow. I've been on many teams that no matter how good you play early in the season, decisions were made, free agents were brought in, younger guys can play well, but they're not going to move up. And after 20 games, then coach has free reign. And
it goes against everything that, it goes against everything that we try and preach, right? Give your best. And if you do,
to be honest with you, I don't think he exaggerated. He was honest with me. I think after 10 games,
which is cool. Yeah.
In 1 year in Dallas, I scored 16 goals. And when the season started the next year, I wasn't on the power play. And it took me 20 games to get back on the power play. And I clicked with Zubov, and I scored 19 that year. But it was set. Trevor Daley was there. Another young defenseman was there. They were going to give them the chance. And in giving a player a chance, it's not fair for the guy you decide not to give a chance. But
no, you're supposed to go with giving a chance on merit, right? Like you deserve it, you get more minutes.
But giving a young player it's most of the time a younger player anyway, or a free agent that the GM needs to look good. Well, you need more than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games. So I believe if I would have went to Pittsburgh, maybe after 10 games, I could have been back in the lineup. But Dan wanted to be honest with me, and I decided to retire, to be honest.
So sports is sometimes predetermined decisions, sometimes political. There's so much that goes into it, though.
I'm not bitter at what I'm saying. I think it makes sense. If you decide to keep Slavkovsky on the third line next year, I don't think if you put him on the third line, I don't think you should take him out after 2 games. You got to give him time. You invested time. You invested a first-round pick with him. First overall pick with him. Maybe it's not the good example,
I
But it's
understand
the
that.
same thing with what you're saying with Hoffman. Like, okay, we'll give you a chance, maybe 5-10 games, but I'll play Harvey Pinard after 10 games if I'm the coach if you're not doing well. I don't care if we get a second-round pick for you rather than getting a fourth-round pick. You're going to get a short amount of time to prove yourself, and then I'm going to play whoever plays best.
Yeah. And you know what? I like Harvey Pinard. Last year, there was an opportunity that was there for him, right? And when players go down with injuries, it's unfortunate for the player that goes down, but it's an opportunity for a player who steps in. And he sees the moment. He sees the opportunity. That's what you want players to do. He did it.
Yeah. Oh, and halfway through this, I know him really well. He played with my son in summer tournaments here in Quebec, stayed with me. And I was like, a lot of people say, well, maybe he should get called up. I'm like, oh, I've seen my son play with Belleville. I've seen Harvey Pinard. I'm not sure he's ready. Yes, he deserves his chance after a few injuries. And then when he got the opportunity, he made the most of it. And obviously, his will, his engagement, his investment in the game, and his hockey sense is at the level of the NHL. So I think he might be one of those guys that they'll keep aside for a bit and move in. But then on the flip side, I wouldn't be surprised to see him on the left side of the first line. They want to camp. Why not?
So how do you feel about Alex Newhook, who they acquired, who's not a center iceman according to these lines? How do you feel about it? Playing second line left wing.
I like the acquisition. I kept track of him when he's a younger player, and I was in junior hockey, and I watched the Avalanche quite a bit actually, and I like the player. I think it's a good trade. It's a good signing. He's going to be part of the core group, and to go back on what we were saying just before, I don't think Martin St. Louis would agree to we signed this guy, play him for 20 games. I think Martin St. Louis has a lot to say. And not saying that Dan Bosma didn't have a lot to say. He won the cup before. But I think Martin St. Louis will have a lot to say. And to keep a guy like Harvey Pinard outside of the lineup, they're going to have to argue quite some time. Maybe for game one of the season. But Gallagher's better play well. Armia better play well. They didn't dress him. He was injured most of the year, but they didn't dress him all that much. I don't think getting the most out of a trade is going to be important next year. I think it's going to be getting the most of what we have and to build around that core group of guys. And to be honest, in 4 or 5 years, if Montreal makes the playoffs and want to challenge, I think having a Harvey Pinard on a third line, and to be able to move up like a Stu Barnes. I played with Stu Barnes in Dallas, the kind of guy that played on the fourth line and he was started on the fourth line every game, but played 17 minutes. Harvey Pinard can be one of those guys.
A shout out to Murphy Clinic, an aesthetic clinic specializing in medical aesthetic care. They offer permanent laser hair removal as well as a wide range of treatments for skin problems such as acne, rosacea, fine lines, and more. They currently have 2 clinics, one located in Montreal, Shop Angus, and the second on the North Shore in Terrebonne. They're also opening soon in Quebec City. Visit murphyclinic.ca or on Instagram at Murphy Clinic. My wife was there earlier today visiting with Kellyanne in Rosemont. So hello to Kellyanne and hello to Pamela as well. All right, okay. Several other topics that I want to get to, actually, because there's another topic that you and I will discuss at one point. I don't want to get into it now, but it has to do with Slafkovsky, okay? Because you just talked about Slafkovsky and keeping him in the lineup, and he's a first-round pick. He's a first overall, but according to these lines, he's on the fourth line. Anyway, it's going to make for another topic on another day. The reason being is we're going to go with a shortened edition version tonight of the show. We're going to go with about 30 minutes, okay? I've already told everyone watching. Some of you are going to get upset saying, only 30 minutes anymore. Folks, I think we're the only podcast, if not the only one, you can count them on one hand, in the country that covers a specific team that is going 12 months a year, okay? It's not the easiest thing to find topics in the third week of July, but we've able to find a couple. I've been able to find a couple of them. Speaking of which, the last time I had you on, you were very high on Zach Benson. And much like Cole Caulfield slipped out of the top 10 in his draft year, which I believe was 2019, Benson, who based on talent alone should have definitely been in the top 10, slipped out of the top 10. You'd have to think it's the same reasons, right, Phil? Lack of size. Benson slips to Buffalo at number 13. And the last time you were on, you said, Tony, I know that this guy's going to be a very good player in the National Hockey League. What did you make of Buffalo getting him at 13, and what did you make of the Canadiens passing?
Well, Canadiens passing at 5 is okay. Like, no problem there. I don't have any issues with that. The selected according to them, the best defenseman in the draft. It's hard to pass up, especially for some people. It can be hard to understand because we have a lot of young defensemen in Montreal. But I like the pick. It's not a sexy pick, but I think it's a safe pick by Montreal if they want to win one day and have guys that can play big minutes. So I'm not surprised Montreal passed. I'm surprised he slipped that far, to be honest with you. I think he's going to be a big game player. That's what I saw.
Oh, really?
U17. The U17, even though it was the normal tournament, we had the 3 teams from Canada and the women's national team that was there. But when push came to shove, the big goals, the big plays were mostly made by him. And I think size in the National Hockey League, as a team, it's an issue. You don't want to be too small. I think Montreal is on the smaller side of teams right now. So can you have him and Caulfield on the first line? Maybe not. But with Buffalo, with big boys, right? Buffalo have some big boys up front.
Yeah.
It's one of the safest pick in the draft. He's going to play
there. You put him on a line with Tage Thompson, all of a sudden he gets insulated, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Why not? And they can feed him.
One's 5'8" and the other one's 6'6", so you just work out the average. That's all.
Yeah, I think overall you got to look at the size. You can't have 5 defensemen that are, 5'8" and under, but you can have smaller defensemen that can move the puck, and you can have bigger guys. So it's a mix. The only position, I guess, nowadays that you can't have smaller guys is in net, right? There's notobody.
They're getting bigger and bigger, eh? The goalies that teams are going after. You take a look at Aiden Hill, and you take a look at Kira Schmid, and you take a look. There was some pretty big goalies last year in the playoffs. They're getting bigger and bigger. Hey, you just said you didn't have a problem with the Canadiens picking Reinbacher, the guy that, according to them, is the best defenseman in the draft and all that stuff. Where do you stand on passing up on Michkov? Where do you stand on that?
Time will tell. Time will tell. He has everything, but there's a lot of, I've heard a lot of some stuff in the media, some stuff from friends of mine that are scouts, when he was seen in town in Nashville, how he was acting and everything.
How was he acting, Phil? Well, you don't have to. You don't have to. You don't have to worry about it because you're not going to tell us the scout's name.
No, I can't say too much, but he was caught in the store, maybe arguing with people and everything, and we were. I don't know if it's true or not.
Okay,
but I like his talent. It's a talent that it's hard to pass.
Yeah,
but is he going to come? Are they going to let him come? How is he going to be when he's here? Montreal. I think Montreal has already the core people within the group. So they went with a safe pick with somebody that will play in the jersey, that will play big minutes, and that will have a decent role. Instead of trying to get a superstar, maybe they believe they have superstars, and at the right time, they will bring in free agents that are older to help Montreal.
I understand that, but if this
but for Philly, I would be happy.
It's a big if, though, right? But if this player comes over, and if, more importantly, this player realizes his potential, he's a greater talent than anyone they've had here in a very, very, very long time.
Time will tell.
You're right. Okay, so now on that note, I'm sure you saw some of the articles yesterday, and hopefully you're watching the Sick podcast, and that Maxim Truman of Donnie Coulis tells us that based on his information, Reinbacher has Osgood Schlatter.
Yeah,
I know a little bit about it because I know of a bunch of soccer players growing up that had it. They're growing pains, basically. Most of the time, you grow out of it. I know Max has a son who, unfortunately, had to undergo an operation and actually is going to end up having a second one. He's a very young soccer player. I believe he's 12 or 13 or something like that. I don't know if I'm getting that age right, but anyway. But what do you make of this? Because we're hearing that the Canadiens weren't aware of this. And as a matter of fact, this team Kloten in Switzerland actually just thought he had inflammation of his knees because he was overused and not because he had Osgood Schlatter. So do you have any experience with Osgood Schlatter, and what can you tell me?
Not at all. I've heard about it before, never had any experience with it, never had to deal with players that had it in junior or at the pro level. I would think if it was a major issue, they would have known. if they were concerned about it, they would have known. If he's playing that well, I don't think if he played that well last year with it, hopefully he gets out of it. But I'm no expert, right? I'm no expert. So
I get it.
Players,
you don't seem to be overly concerned though, because he brought it last year, right?
No.
Okay.
He was playing well recently.
Okay.
Why is it going to be? And it's growing pains, right?
Where should he play this upcoming season, David Reinbacher?
Maybe another year in Europe, but
Why?
I wouldn't mind the American Hockey League.
I ask you because Simon the Snake Boisvert last night, felt very strongly about this. He wants Reinbacher and Laval right away. He wants them to play in a league that resembles the NHL, where you can have people watching him. He can have the team close to him. Adam Nicholas can be close to him, for example. So,
to me, it's when you cut a player in junior, right? You cut them in junior; they're younger. But they say, should I go back to a midget AAA? Should I go to junior AAA? I said, listen, go where you're going to improve. Skills are going to improve. You're going to be a better player, and you're going to be challenging for a spot next year. I think it's the same for him, but the decision will be made by Montreal probably. But it's a good caliber where he plays back home. Right, he plays with older guys.
Yes,
almost older guys there than in the American Hockey League.
Yeah, Guy Boucher says the Swiss League is a better league than the American Hockey League. All right,
I won't disagree. So I think if the player is a very good player, it's a win-win situation. Where do you feel comfortable playing? How do you feel about being here? Do you want to be here home for another year, and then next year? That's when we need you to challenge for a spot. He's not going to challenge. Great things if he does this year down for a spot, but I don't think so. But what's going to make you better? And I would very much consider his opinion on where he's going to play. I wouldn't force it on him. I would sit with him. I'm sure they have sat with him already. They'll say, listen, let's see how camp goes. But the American Hockey League is not an easy league to play in. And play that many games, that many nights, 3-3s, busing all around. Over there, it could be better, but I would let the player choose. I would let the player have a say, a very good say in that decision.
Hey, who knows? Maybe he can do 1 year in Switzerland, next year in Laval,
and
then join the Canadiens, because I don't believe in rushing guys.
No.
One scout always told me an extra year of junior or American Hockey League or Europe development has never hurt anybody, but rushing a player 1 year too soon has.
Not many 18-year-old plays in the NHL in defense anyway. Not a few 19-year-old do. So when he's 20, 21, that's when you want him to come in and play 18, 19 minutes, like Gooley did. Come in, you're ready. So whatever the best route is for him, because I don't think 2 years in the American Hockey League before he plays in the NHL would be good. It's a tough league for an 18-year-old.
Yeah, so they're going to play 18, 19, 20 minutes, and we played almost close to 30 minutes here tonight.
Yeah,
Thank you so much, Philippe Boucher,
regular
collaborator on BPM Sport, TVA Sport, and you can hear him, hopefully, for the upcoming season more often and watch him on the Sick Podcast. Merci beaucoup, mon chum.
Take care, bud. Merci.
I
Bye.
appreciate it. All right. Thank you very much. All right. So you can watch us on YouTube. If you liked it, like it, share it with your friends, comment Sick, 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 SICK. If you're going to listen on Google, Apple, or Spotify, leave us a 5-star review. It's our way of feeling the love. For Agnello, Sammy, and Juliana Cavallaro, and Shane Gomo, I'm Master Control. We'll be back tomorrow night. Same time, same place. I'm Marinaro.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group, driven to be different. La Vida Tibi, embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination.